We're live. Go ahead and say what's up in the chat. I see that we have William, looks like from Ireland. We got Mio. We got Robert here in Krakow. Where's everyone's coming from? We got people in Taiwan. We got Nicholas. Welcome, everyone. We got Michael over here in London, and happy Easter. Nicholas, welcome everybody. Welcome to the chat. And cool. So it looks like we're going. Everyone hear us all right? We're looking good. All right. Love from India. All right. So welcome. Today we have Saleh here, who is the author of Jesse.Trade. So as you know, I've been doing a few live streams where I get people who have a different perspective. So I've been doing this YouTube channel for a number of years, and it's just been me in a room doing coding tutorials and showing you how to build apps using Python for finance. And I've started recently inviting some guests who either are the founders of fintech or trading app companies or the authors of open source software. And today we have Saleh, who is the author of Jesse.Trade, which is described as an algo trading framework for Python, specifically focused on crypto trading. So, hey, welcome, Saleh. How are you doing?
Hi, Larry. And hi, guys. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for having me on the channel. Your channel is, I think, without a doubt, one of the most useful educational channels on the YouTube for the whole community. So thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot. And yeah, and it's kind of funny that I reached out to you because I think I was doing a roadmap video a little bit earlier this year when I was going to spend more time investigating a lot of open source libraries out there, and a number of names kept popping up. And one of the bullet items was look into Jesse.Trade and cover how to use it to develop a strategy. And then for some reason I saw your name again and that you're the author, and I just sent you a DM on a whim on Twitter saying, hey, how would you be interested in talking about this? And yeah, of course, there's no better person to talk about it than the person who put all the thought into developing this. So welcome, and I'm glad you were willing to come on here. I know some programmers, you know, they're not that interested in having an interview or talking about this. So it's good that you're open to doing a live stream like this. So yeah, so why don't we start with just a little bit about your background, like how did you get involved, your software development career, but also how did you end up focusing on coding for finance and end up working on Jesse.Trade?
Yeah, well, initially I used to be a web developer. That's how I got started with programming in general. And more specifically, I started with Laravel, which is a framework for PHP, and also this framework called Vue.js, which is for JavaScript. And the reason I'm mentioning these two is because Jesse is actually heavily inspired by both of them. And if someone is already familiar with those, well, they're probably going to notice a similarity. I used to create websites for clients. I also created this open source social bookmarking platform called Voten, and that's actually how I got started with open. I got started with Algotrading in 2018 after seeing the result of a weekend project of a friend of mine. It's a long story, but just to summarize it, he called me. He told me that, hey, in this weekend I coded this trading bot. It nearly doubled my capital in under 28 hours, which was fantastic. But after that, it got liquidated, which is an interesting story about risk management. But that's how I got excited about this thing and started working. After that, I kept going. I read a lot of books. I listened to podcasts, basically anything that I could get my hands on. And after getting profitable, I started trading my own capital and also the capital of a few investors who knew me personally. I also made a couple of trading bots for a few clients. And that's actually one of the ways Jesse got evolved over the years. But my last full-time job was I was working as the head developer in this American crypto hedge fund. And I can say for sure that was the best experience I got about quantitative trading. I also got to know some really friendly researchers who do strategy development, who are good with math, unlike me. But currently, I am full-time on developing Jesse, and I also trade my own capital on the side.
Great, great. That's amazing background. So sounds like you started with crypto trade. Like I noticed you mentioned when we were talking and in our notes here, you mentioned a couple of books that I think are focused on stock trading. So did you start with trading stocks and algo trading using stocks, or did you go directly into crypto in 2018?
I went directly to crypto because it was just easier to get started with. And in fact, I started with trading on BitMEX because it was so easy to register, no document, nothing was required. And the APIs were, they weren't super greatly documented, but they were enough for me to get started. But with the stocks, it was a bit harder, and I don't know even if back then platforms such as Alpaca were out there. Which have made this easier today. But yeah, back then it was harder. But when I was looking for books and resources, I mostly read about the stocks because with crypto, I realized that unfortunately some people are just too excited about Bitcoin, and they're a bit biased, for the Bitcoin's price to just rise. But with the stocks, I think are a bit more mature. So I read mostly about stocks.
Excellent, excellent. And then do you find some of those same strategies and techniques translated pretty well to cryptocurrencies or whatever assets you wanted to trade? Excellent.
Definitely. Some of them were really simple but super useful. So for example, just an idea of using a bigger time frame for determining the bigger trend of the market. This simple trick, it helped me a lot. But even for something simple like this, I needed a framework that actually could do it, because not every other boss out there did allow me to trade the bigger time frame. So yeah.
Great. Yeah. So speaking of needing a framework, so sounds like you were looking for something. I mean, usually when someone develops something new like this, it means they looked at what was out there and they decided, maybe nothing out there quite meets their needs, or they're the type of person that likes to control every aspect and wants it to work, their way that fits in their mind really well. So at some point you decided, hey, I'm going to develop this framework called Jesse.Trade. So can you tell me a little bit about how that evolution happened? Did it just start with a few scripts and then gradually you found yourself building a library and you finally said, hey, let me build an open source package? How did that go?
Yeah, well, definitely I started with looking up other trading bots. And back then I found one was called Gecko and another was Zembot. And to be honest with you, back then I didn't know any Python. I was a JavaScript developer, and that's why I found those ones. And I really did my best to implement the strategy that I had in mind with those tools, but I couldn't. And exactly the feature that I needed the most was exactly this one, that I needed the bigger time frame for determining the direction of my trades. And that's something that those tools didn't offer. Trading views backtesting, I think it's called Pine Editor. It does allow that, but unfortunately it has the look ahead bias. And that's actually something that wasted like 3 or 4 months of my time. After realizing that there were these small issues, and it was really hard for me to build on top of those tools, to be honest, because I'm not really the best person for reading other people's code and building on top of that. If something, I usually prefer to implement my own code, especially if it's something really complex. So that's what I did. that's why I decided to create my own trading bot. But back then I didn't really call it a trading bot. I'm sorry. Back then I didn't call it a trading framework. I called it a trading bot, as most people do. But as the time went, I realized that most of the features that I needed for building the strategies, I could extract those into external modules, which I can import for most of the strategies that I try. I did that, and the more I did that, I realized the more it's becoming similar to other frameworks that I mentioned earlier, like Vue.js and Laravel. So that's when I started to call it a framework rather than a trading bot.
Awesome. Okay, so eventually this evolved into a framework, and you had enough code there. At what point did you decide, hey, let me not only just use this for myself, but like share it with the community, post on GitHub? Did you just one day you just packaged it up, published on GitHub, and then you started receiving issues? Like, tell me about the evolution of it as an open source project.
Yeah, because of my background with open source, with the previous website that I built called Woten, which I mentioned earlier, I kind of liked open source, especially the part that, when you write something for yourself, sometimes you might be even excited about it, but the next day you might, ask yourself, is this really good or is it just in my head, right? But when you put your code out there, other people are going to see it, they're going to read it, use it. And if they also say that you've done a good job, well, I will be more confident about my code, right? So one day I was like, okay, so this thing looks good, but let's just put it out there like the previous project. But by the way, the previous project, it wasn't profitable or successful by any means. So I was like, let's just do this. If some people join me, that would be great. Maybe I find a few teammates. If not, I won't lose anything. I did that, and surprisingly, I found a couple of really helpful and friendly people, which joined on the Slack channel that we had back then, which doesn't exist anymore. And they also gave me a lot of positive comments, which really gave me a spirit to keep working on this. And yeah, that's basically how it became an open source project.
Great.
I didn't plan it. I definitely did not plan it. I built it for myself, trading in my own capital and the other capital that I was trading. It wasn't supposed to be an open source project.
Absolutely. And I think that's how a lot of the best projects get started, because if you just set out this big master plan on how everything's supposed to happen, usually it deviates from that. But really, you just have to start out something small, try it out, and just iterate and be able to roll with whatever feedback you get and adjust from there. And it's kind of cool that it evolved. And I've seen that with a lot of web frameworks. I'm sure, like you mentioned, Laravel, Vue.js. I know Ruby on Rails, they talk about how, they just had some app like Basecamp that they wanted to build. And then, gradually the guy put together some tools, and then it became Ruby on Rails. And now millions of people use it around the world. So it really just evolved naturally out of a real world need. So that's what I see here as well. And so, yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about this framework a little bit more. And let's just start at the high level, just some of the different features it offers and maybe a little bit of comparison. I'm sure as someone that develops this, you've probably looked at some other, there's other alternatives that people use. Maybe you can just mention, some features you offer, and maybe actually let's not do any comparisons yet. Let's just talk about, what's the high level bullet points of features that are available with JesseTrade. What can you do with it?
Yeah, well, first of all, to summarize what Jesse is for people who aren't familiar at all with it, it's basically an algo trading framework that helps you write your own strategies with a simple API, backtest them, run optimizations on them, and eventually, if they were profitable, trade them live. And to mention a couple of features, well, as I said, the syntax for using it is really simple. That's where I put most of my focus. It has the most complete technical indicator library, and that's because behind the scenes it's using other libraries, but you don't really have to deal with them. So that's why it's more complete, by using all the others, all the open source ones at least. It has a smart ordering system which decides which order type to use for you. So you don't have to think about whether to use a market order, limit order, or a stop order. It'll decide it for you. Next, you can use multiple timeframes inside your strategy, as I mentioned a few times by now. And what makes it different from other platforms out there is that it can do it without the look-ahead bias, which for people who aren't super familiar with it, it means using data from the future, which in real time doesn't really matter, but in your backtest, you could be a victim of it without even knowing about it, like I was back then.
Can you dive into that a little bit more? I noticed you mentioned that was a problem with TradingView, and I don't actually. I make some videos about TradingView because people. I use TradingView for the chart part, but I don't really look at the back testing a bit of that. But I've heard it has some issues. Can you dive into that look ahead bias a little bit more and how the TradingView Pine script system works?
Yeah, sure. Well, as great as TradingView is as a platform, by the way, I mean, I use it every day, but mostly for charting. One of the problems it has, if you've seen that it has a lot of indicators, it also has a lot of strategies. And sometimes people open those strategies and look at the metrics, and many of them actually have like super great numbers, right? Like some numbers are too good to be true. And the problem with it, I mean, obviously they're not true, right? I mean, they look too good to be true, and they're not really true. And the problem is because they are either overfit or they are a victim of the look-ahead bias. And the reason for that is, no one's with the right mind is going to actually use the price of the future in their strategies, right? I mean, that would be crazy. But where this happens without people knowing it, including myself, is when they use indicator values of bigger time frames in their backtests. And the problem with that is because if I'm trading the 1 hour time frame and an indicator value is using the price candles of the 4 hours candle, in my backtest, when I say give me the price of the current 4 hours candle, it's gonna give me the closing price for a few hours after right now. And again, you're not taking the actual price of that, but your indicator calculations are. So what happens is that your indicator values are now going to be a bit smarter than what they actually are. You know, what they will be when you are live trading them. And that's how most of the people that I've seen fall into this trap. But with Jesse, I made sure that's not going to happen, because at each point at time, Jesse only has the data up to that moment. So even if you say, hey, give me the candle for the current 4 hours time frame, that candle is going to be generated on the fly using the previous 1 minute candles. And this happens behind the scenes, so you don't really deal with it. So you don't have to know how it works. But so basically, the closing price that your 4 hours candle is going to give you right now is going to be for that moment. But on TradingView, that's not the case, and why people have this problem.
Excellent. Good description there. Thanks for highlighting that or diving into that a bit more. And yeah, so is there some other features you'd like to mention before we dive into more of a demo of what the platform looks like? I think it would help us to kind of visualize how it works and how it looks.
Yeah, sure. So another thing is that you can also use multiple symbols. And a good example usage of this, especially in the crypto market, is that even if you're trading Ethereum, you still want to look at the price of Bitcoin, right? Because the price of Bitcoin moves the entire market. So you don't want to have only the price of Ethereum. And you can do that with Jesse. You can also trade multiple pairs at the same time. For example, if your strategy is a pairs trading strategy, such as statistical arbitrage, you can do that with Jesse. We also have a lot of utility functions, for example, risk management tools. So for example, if you want to just risk 2% of your capital, you can easily do that. Jesse orders backtest results in various formats, such as charts, simple metrics, quant stat metrics, if you're familiar with the library, but it's basically, it gives you a lot of useful charts and metrics. It can give you an exported file with TradingView's Pine editor so that you can copy that code, paste it into TradingView, and visualize the trades on TradingView if you like their charts better. It can also give it to you in CSV or JSON. We also have this debugging mode, which goes through all the logs of what Jesse did at each specific time. So basically, your strategy isn't going to sail like a black box. I mean, I hear this all the time that algo trading is like using a black box. But if you use Jesse, you can go through those logs and make sure that the strategy is behaving as you expected. You can import candles. Using Jesse, it will clean the data behind the scenes, so you don't have to worry about the missing candles. You can use the optimization mode, which finds the optimal parameters for your strategy, and behind the scenes, it uses the genetic algorithm. And we also support leverage trading, so you can trade futures contracts with it, or you can also backtest it. So, for example, if you're using leverage, which is something risky, you can now make sure that your risk is measured. Yeah, I think these are the top features that I should mention for now.
Awesome.
But there's a lot.
I'm gonna pause. Okay, I'm gonna pause for, and it sounds very comprehensive. So I'm glad you went through that. Sounds like it's very fully featured, and we'll get to the demo in a moment. And I just wanted to pause for a second to take a couple of audience questions. So Diego here, and I put his question on the screen. He says, are there known presets for algorithms so I don't need to start from scratch? And so it sounds like, there's tons of different features. And what do you do to make sure that people can get started easily? So is there some built-in templates or examples that people could follow if, they don't exactly know how to get started?
Yeah, well, the first part that everybody needs to do is installation. And I started with documenting everything for each operating system so that they can install the dependencies. But later I realized that even that is a bit hard, especially for users who are more of a researcher than a developer. So I made Docker a first-class citizen of the framework. So if they follow the documentation, they can get started using Docker without even knowing Docker. So there's just like 2 or 3 commands that if they just copy and paste it, they will get started with Jesse. So the installation part, I really focus on that, make it easy. And as for presets, if Diego is, if what he means is like example strategies, we also have these repositories where people, including me, can submit their own strategies, which other people can look and learn. So that they can build similar ones. But really, I really try not to encourage our users to use the built-in strategies, which is kind of the opposite of what other trading bots, especially the cloud-based ones, do. I try not to encourage people to do that, because I personally never use the strategies made by other people unless I actually understand the logic behind it so well that I can actually edit it myself. So what I did with Jesse is that I really want users to learn how to do research, to develop their own strategies, instead of just giving them ready out of the box strategies that they can just plug and trade.
Yeah, and yeah, I highlighted another question here, and I think, I get these types of questions a lot. It seems like people just want you to just give them something that they can just click a button and it just starts making money for them, basically, right? And so no one really does that, right? You're probably just providing a few basic strategies that are examples, kind of the hello world of getting started, not something that you've optimized. Anything that you have personally that's successful for you, usually you're probably going to keep that to yourself, right? You don't just hand it out to millions of people on the internet, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also, there's this strategy, sometimes they call it the holy grail strategy or something like that. And I strongly believe that doesn't exist. I think you should always look at the current market and write a strategy for that specific market conditions and trade it. So you will never find one strategy that works everywhere. So if you take a strategy from someone else and expect it to work all the time, First of all, it's not going to. And secondly, you should know that strategy so well to be able to decide whether or not that's the right strategy for the current market conditions, you know?
Absolutely. And yeah, and that's why, and also a lot of these books, sometimes I mention a lot of these books that have been written about stocks in the 80s or 90s, the times have changed a bit. So you'll notice, I mean, I've noticed even in the past, if you haven't noticed how markets have changed over the last 2 or 3 years, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like with Wall Street bets and things like that, like the amount of just regular people just trading options, like the volume there is huge. And with COVID and just different random things like that have occurred, it's hard to say like something that applied in the 80s or 90s or a different regime is applicable to the current market. And so you can't just put something out there permanently and say this is what you should do, right?
Yeah.
And so I got a couple questions on brokers, or so what this integrates with. And I'm not sure if you said this yet, like just different first of all, what exchanges would this work with? And is this applicable to stocks at all, or is it just purely crypto?
Well, right now it's purely just crypto. And well, most of the popular exchanges are already integrated. And I also add new ones based on the demands from the community. But in the future, I will definitely go after other markets such as Forex and stocks. In fact, one of my fellow developers, we have worked on this new branch called the stock market, which we played around with the idea of using Jesse for other brokers. But I haven't officially launched anything for others to play around with. I want to get crypto right, make sure that it works flawlessly, and then move on to the other markets.
And there's another question here on the backtest data. So you mentioned you can download a data. How much data can you download? I know. Did the stream pause for a second? Some platforms. I had a live stream here with Tradewell, and one of the things he does is limits. I think he has a premium version and a free version, and I think one of the limitations is just how much data you can get back at how much historical data you can get. And TradingView, for instance, I think it works the same way, right? You can get a certain amount of data in the past. So how much data do you let people obtain easily?
Yeah, well, Jesse fetches the candles directly from the exchanges. So as many as candles that the exchange gives you, you can backtest it using Jesse. And to give you an example, Coinbase goes back as much as 2013, Bitfinex I think 2016, and Binance 2018. So depending on which exchange data you're using, you can run your backtest. There's no limitation by Jesse for sure.
Great. Okay. So yeah, it just depends on what platform or what exchange you're using. Great. And that makes sense. And then Lucius asked, what are your thoughts on decentralized exchanges? Do you interact with those at all? I think I saw on your roadmap you mentioned DEXs. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I will definitely add it at some point, because most of the features that you see in Jesse is just because at some point I wanted to scratch my own itch, right? And today, whenever I want to trade a big volume, I actually prefer DEXs. But unfortunately, I cannot trade using Jesse on those. So yes, I will definitely add DEXs. And in fact, I intend to do it by adding support for 1inch, because I realized that 1inch's API is connected to all different blockchains, such as Polygon, BSC, which I think are more suitable for algo trading because of the fast transaction speeds and lower fees.
And then we got one more on if there's any helpful visual charting tools to help analyze code strategy, review entry and exits visually. And I think maybe this might be a good segue or jumping off point to do a bit of a demo, because if we want to show some of these visualizations, and you mentioned the quant stats integration that shows all these different reports. Maybe we can look at some of this visually now. Do you want to jump into a quick demo of how this works?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's do it.
Right. Just allow me to share my screen.
Okay. And let me.
Can you see my screen?
I will put it up. Okay, there we go.
All right, so as for the demo, I implemented a golden cross strategy, which I think is like the hello world strategy of the algo trading world. And I'm gonna quickly go through the code, and then I will run a backtest and show you the exported results, including the charts. That, by the way, will show you the entry and exit points as well. So first of all, as you can see, it's just a simple Python class. That means you can import any module or anything that any kind of data that you want to use in your strategy, you can. Now, a golden cross strategy is basically we have two moving averages. One of them with the period of 50, the second one with the period of 200. And whenever the 50 period moving average goes above the 200 moving average, a golden cross happens, which means the price is likely to rise. So this is defining a simple moving average with Jesse. As you can see, it's just a property method. I use the TA module. The simple moving average is called SMA. I just pass the current candles, and I specified the period. That's it. Nothing fancy here. You don't even have to know which formats the candles are or anything like that. Then I defined a long SMA, which is the 200 period. And my entry row, the method for that in Jesse is called should long, which is like a question. It asks you, should I long? Should I open a long position? And the code for that is just whether or not the short EMA is above the long. The short SMA is above the long SMA. That's it. If this is true, it will open a long position. And then we have the position sizing part, which is go long. So it's kind of like, should I go long? If yes, now let's go long. That's how I think about the name of the methods. So in here, first we decide the entry price, which I have set it to the current price, which is just self.price. As for the quantity of my position, I have used the size to quantity utility functions, which takes the current the capital you want to add, and I'm passing which is self.capital, and the second parameter is the entry price, which I specified above. And by the way, as you can see, all the names are just as simple as you can think about it. Like, it's just all the names are exactly the way that I would think about it. So if I want to take my capital, I would access it by self capital, nothing fancy. And to tell Jesse to actually open a long position, or in other words, to submit a buy order, I will say self.buy equals, then I will pass the quantity and then the entry price. And by the way, you could define multiple orders if you like. So instead of this, I could have said my buy price should be an array of orders. And this is if I wanted to submit 2 orders or 10 orders or any number, any one. But and in that case, I would have just defined them as this. So basically, it would be a list of tuples. But because in most cases people want to enter at once into their positions, I have made this shortcut. So you just pass the quantity and the entry price, and that's it. And then to specify my stop loss, I've said that when a position opens, and this is how I define it in Jesse, I will say on open position. Now, what I wanted to say was to set my stop loss 2 ATRs below the entry price. Now, the ATR is this very useful indicator that kind of gives you the true range of the market, like how much volatility is inside the market. So sometimes to specify my stop loss, I just say 2 times of the average value of that below my entry price is a good number. Now, of course, this could be anything. So first of all, I calculate the ATR value using the TA module again. Then my sub price, as I said, is the entry price of the current position, and I specify that by saying self.position dot entry price minus 2 times of the ATR. And to submit the stop loss order using Jesse, again, I say self.stop loss equals, then I pass the quantity, which, because I wanted to close all my position using this stop loss, I've said self.position.quantity, and then I pass the price, which I defined here. And that's it. By doing this, Jesse will open a long position when a golden cross happens. And after the position is open, it will also submit the stop loss order. Now, to exit my position, I wanted to say that whenever which is the opposite rule, I want to liquidate my position. And by the way, this is wrong. I just have to say if inside the UpdatePosition method, which is executed on every new candle, I'll just say if the short SMA is below the long SMA, self.liquidate. That's it. I'm saying if this condition happened, liquidate my current position.
And the stop loss function that you defined up there with the ATR, does that liquidate as well, like this on open position there? So when you set that self.stop loss, does that also trigger liquidation? So
yeah, exactly. When a position opens, it's going to submit the sub order. Now, my exit is going to be either if the sub order is hit by the market, but if fortunately the price goes higher and I'm in the profit, but the EMA, the moving average, the death cross happens, we'll the position there. So we kind of have two exit conditions. But you know, the one with the stop loss, I don't really think of it as an exit rule. I think submitting a stop loss is just something that you have to always do. Yeah, so you would define your exit rules inside the UpdatePosition, especially because this is something that will keep happening. Like on every new candle, you have to evaluate your strategy. Should I exit now or should I keep the position? And if you wanted to do that, you would just do it like this. By the way, you can also use this function for updating your stop loss. So I could just copy this code and put it here. And now on every new candle, Jesse will re-evaluate the current value for the ATR and the new sub price. And by doing this, and just this, by the way, this is identical to the higher one, it will cancel the previous sub order and submit a new one, which is kind of the expected behavior that most people want.
So another way, like if you named it slightly different, UpdatePosition could also be kind of like on next candle or on candle close or something like that, right? Is that okay?
Exactly.
And is this okay? So on open position, where's an appropriate place? I don't know if this would be too coupled to the strategy class, but let's say I open position and I want to send myself a email or text Discord notification or something like that. I want to log it to a database or insert my own logic, inject my own logic to do something extra besides that's not related to the strategy. I just want to log it or do something interesting with that data. Like, where is it appropriate to put it in here, or do you have some separate place that goes?
Well, you could put it here, but you have to know that UpdatePosition only gets called if a position is already open, right? Because I mean, the name says that if UpdatePosition, so you have to have an already open position. But in your case, I'm imagining that it's for something that you want to do all the time, no matter if you have an open position or not. And if that's the case, you could use some other functions that are documented, obviously. One of them is called before. So you can define it, and this function will get executed on every new candle, no matter what. And it's actually the first thing that happens. So in many cases, for example, let's say you have this machine learning model that should decide for you whether to open a new position or close an already open one. Let's like reinforcement learning, right? So let's say it's going to decide everything for you. If that's the case, you probably need to do those process before executing any other thing. So inside the before method is probably the best way to do that. And there are also other functions, and based on the usage, they are named different. For example, just like we have a before, we also have this after method, which obviously is executed after every other method is executed. And by the way, there's this really useful diagram on the documentation website, which shows you exactly which methods are going to get executed at each time. So, for example, the shoot long method, which I described earlier, is only going to ask the question if no position is open, right? Because if you already have a long position, then you're not going to open another long position, right? You cannot do that on an exchange. You could increase the size of your already open position. And if that's the case, again, because you're dealing with the position, then you have to put it inside the UpdatePosition method. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Thank you. And then, okay, so likewise, so I assume there's, and we should dive into the documentation if we want to know more, but there's probably a lot of different events. There's probably a should short and a bunch of different functions that you have already thought through. And yeah, so yeah, maybe we can look at those real quick. And then we'll jump into, some people are already starting to ask about back testing and visualization. And so the strategy part is pretty clear here. And so the next thing we'll jump into is going from this strategy to figuring out a back test, live trading, and all that kind of stuff. All that kind of thing. Cool.
Right.
Okay.
So to continue with this strategy, so this was the update position. The should cancel method. It's I mean, right now in this strategy, I'm using a market order. Although I'm not saying I want a market order, but I said that my entry price should be the current price, right? And I did it here. So the entry price equals to self.price, which is the current price. And when I do this, it will open a position using a market order, right? So I will get into the trade for sure. But if I were to submit a limit order, then there wasn't a guarantee that I would have opened the position, right? Maybe on the next candle, my order wasn't hit yet. Now, the question is, should I cancel that order and submit a new one, or should I keep it? Now, to answer that question, you would use the should cancel method. And in this case, I'm returning true. So if I were to use a submit order, on each new candle, Jesse would have canceled the previous order and submit a new one using these calculations all over again. But in this strategy, because I'm using the current price or a market order, in other words, this method doesn't really have much use. Now, yeah, this is basically the gist of the strategy. And now let's try backtesting it. Now, real quick, I will show you how to import candles, because first you need to have data to run backtests on it. Now, inside the import candles tab, you will specify the exchange, and here we have Binance Futures, most of the popular ones.
So yeah, sorry. So even before this part, so you were showing the code for a strategy, right? So I'm developing this locally. Like if I download and install Jesse, I'm developing that strategy, writing my code locally in my editor. But now it looks like you've jumped to like a UI. So JesseTrade is not only like a set of classes and libraries, but it looks like you have like a built-in UI where I can click buttons to download data. Like I don't need to write a script to download data and get a CSV. You have this is included out of the box, right?
Yeah, exactly. Initially, Jesse used to be a CLI tool, so you would have to enter commands into the terminal to interact with it, to import candles, execute backtests, etc. But I realized that the terminal is a bit daunting to non-developer users. For example, researchers, people who are really good with math, but are not great with programming. The development world. So I realized that having a GUI dashboard would be a better option, especially for those users. Also, another problem was that CLI apps have these limitations, because you have you just have this basic window where you can type stuff. You cannot scroll windows, you cannot show charts on it, and that's really limiting. So we migrated to a GUI dashboard since a few versions ago, but the dashboard is still running on your computer. So for example, in my case, I'm actually running inside my app, and here are the logs where I'm running Jesse. And after running it, you will open Jesse's dashboard inside your browser of choice. In this case, I'm using Firefox. You could also install it on a remote server but open the dashboard inside your local browser and use it like that.
I think it broke up a little bit. Cool. So you have, I can't tell if it's choppy right now. Okay, so you're getting data right now, right?
Yes. So here's the exchange. I chose Binance. For the symbol, you can type any symbol that's supported by that exchange. Okay. And then you specify the start date. And by the way, you don't have to specify the finish date because it will also always be up to this moment. And then you click on start. And if you want to import other candles from other exchanges at the same time, you can open a new tab inside the dashboard and do that. And as long as you're importing from other exchanges at the same time, you're not going to hit their limits and you'll be fine. You can also move on to executing a backtest at the same time because these processes are happening inside different cores of your CPU. So you don't have to worry about executing a couple of tasks at the same time.
Amazing. So, and then what's a route? So what are you calling a route here?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, a route is basically a networking expression, I think. And this is one of the things that I was inspired by Laravel. So in networking, when a request comes, the server or your application has to process it. There's going to be a few layers, like the layers of an onion, if you will, and that's where your processing happens. And at the end, there's going to be an output, right? So I thought to myself, okay, in trading, we kind of have the same thing. At each point, let's say once every minute, we're going to receive a new candle from the exchange, whether using the WebSocket API, the REST API, it doesn't matter. We receive a new candle, then based on the current conditions, for example, whether I have an open position, whether I have active orders, and questions like that, the trading bot has to decide some actions. It does it, and then there's an output, which could be to submit a few new orders to the market, close the position, something, and stuff like that. I thought to myself that this is kind of similar route working. So I called basically each pair, or and by pair I mean like a pair of the exchange, the symbol, the time frame, and the strategy, a route, because well, I needed to call it something, but because of what I just described, I call it a route. So basically, a route is how you tell Jesse which exchange to use, which symbol to use, which time frame to use, and which strategy. So for example, if I want to run a pairs trading strategy, which is where you trade two assets at the same time, I could just add a new trading route. And if the first one is Bitcoin, the second one could be Ethereum, and then I would choose the time frame, and they could be different even. And then I would choose the strategy, and now I could run a backtest two routes at the same time.
That's awesome. And when it says golden cross there, how is it picking up those strategies? So you wrote that strategy in Python code. Does that go in a database, or is it like reading the file system? How does it know which strategies to populate in this dropdown?
Yeah, it reads it from your existing files. So to create a new one, you just click on the new strategy. You give it a name, click on create, And then if you open your project's files and go through your strategies directory, you should find the newly created strategy. And it has also, it creates it from a template. So you have basically all the necessary methods that have to be implemented inside each strategy. But of course, there are other methods that you might need or might not. And those are excluded from this file. But you can find it on the documentation.
And so does it validate a little bit? So you're extending that strategy class. So before I can actually put that strategy in that user interface, does it know that it will run like validly and check the syntax and things like that, and that it overrides the appropriate methods, or is that kind of on your responsibility?
There's this problem in programming. You can have simplicity or you can have flexibility.
Sure.
And even though Jesse tries to focus on simplicity more, it also tries to be flexible. And as I mentioned, the Jesse's strategies are merely Python classes. Mm-hmm. So for you to be able to run any code that you like in it, it has to give you merely the Python output that you would get if you were executing your own custom scripts. But just to make it easy for you, so instead of just getting those, for example, if you make a mistake inside your strategy, let's actually do that. Let's say I define a variable or have a syntax error. I think this is now if inside the dashboard. Now, if I backtest this strategy now, I should get an error. And the error is exactly the exception that you would have got on the terminal window. But because usually they're a bit daunting, on top of giving you the full traceback, Jesse also gives you the summary of it here. And I've done my best to simplify the errors as much as possible. So sometimes when a user makes a mistake, it's because they are missing something. And by something, I mean, for example, they are using a function named wrong or something like that. If I can guess it, I usually implement better error messages for it, so that when they get an error, it will also guide them on what to do, or maybe even give them a link to the documentation where I've explained how to use it.
Great. So yeah, so it sounds like you catch some common errors, some basic runtime errors, but you can't verify their entire strategy or anything. So you try to give them some heads up when they're initially importing the strategy. Okay, and then once you do that, it appears in this route list. You can add multiple routes, so you can actually do multiple exchanges. You can do multiple timeframes. You can do multiple strategies, multiple asset types, or multiple symbols, right? So this is great.
Exactly.
Okay, great. And then you were back in the okay. So we're in the backtest tab now. So are we going to click start and visualize one of these? What do I see here when I click start?
Yeah, so real quick, I have enabled all the output options. That would be debugging mode, charts, trading view, quant stats, CSV, JSON. And for the duration, I have specified since the 6th month of 2020 up to the 9th. And the time frame is 15 minutes. Now, by the way, I could either click on start, or if I want to run a couple of backtests, let's say with different time frames, and then compare them together side by side, I could actually do that on a new tab. And already specified all the parameters here to duplicate this tab, but still start the backtest, which is a common use case. I could just click on start in a new tab, and that would start the backtest inside a second tab. So I would still have this one to, let's say, change the time frame to something else, such as 30 minutes. And like I said, each of these are being executed inside isolated CPU cores of your system. So you can easily start a couple of backtests at the same time without worrying about hitting the limits of your machine.
Amazing.
So in this case, the one with the 15 minutes time frame. By the way, here you can see the period of the backtest, the starting and ending dates. You will get an equity curve chart, which is interactive. You will get a summary of the performance, which has the total closed trades, how much profit you made, how much your starting and finishing balance was, max drawdown, the annual return, expectancy, win rate, average holding time, basically Sharpe ratio, Calvert ratio, basically all the metrics that are common among quantitative traders. And as I mentioned, we also have other types of outputs. So for example, I think the one that we're more excited about is the legacy chart. Real quick, right? So for example, this one also shows your equity chart, and in here it shows you the market price data and the submitted orders. So you can see both your buy and sell orders on this chart. Although, because it's not interactive, it's using the matplotlib library of Python, you cannot really zoom into it. And that's actually something that I'm going to add to the framework. So as you just saw, the equity curve that exists inside the dashboard was interactive. So I'm going to implement these charts inside the dashboard too, so that it would be interactive. But just to see like a bigger picture of how your strategy did, you can use this chart. We also have other types of outputs. One of the very useful ones is called the Quantstats, which is a really cool open source library that gives you really useful metrics. Now, it also shows you the equity curve. It also does a benchmark of your strategy against a buy and hold strategy, as if you just bought the asset and hold it. It will show you the annual returns in a chart. It will show you the monthly returns, daily returns, the worst 5 drawdown periods, which is one of my favorite metrics, the underwater plot, the monthly returns. It also shows you the metrics in numbers, again, such as Sharpe ratio, the cumulative return, max drawdown. It will also give you an output of the backtest in CSV or JSON, which are really useful if you're a developer and you want to use the output of Jesse to build your own platform. For example, this one really awesome user of our community, he built this visualization tool, which you give it Jesse's output, and it visualizes the trades inside an interactive chart, basically like the one that I just described that I'm going to add to the dashboard. Yeah. He built a version of that already. So this is how it's used. The debugging logs is actually super useful because, like I said, when you're trading your strategy, you don't want it to be a black box, right? You want to know what it did at each point. You want to see if it behaved the way you expected, because when we are manually trading, we as humans are really good at catching our mistakes, right? I mean, we don't even make mistakes that much. And by type of mistakes that I'm saying we don't make, I mean like, let's say you have an open position, and if some condition happens, you're going to close your position. You don't intend to increase the size of that position, like at all. And if you see your open position, you're probably going to just click on close position using a market button on the exchange. That's something really simple. We don't even think about it. But when you're doing it with a trading bot, there's a good chance that you might make a mistake somewhere. Maybe you want to close the position, but you increase the size of it accidentally. So looking into the debugging logs is a really good way to make sure your strategy is behaving the way it is. Or let's say you define a strategy and it's not behaving the way, the ending results aren't what you expected. Let's say you were sure that it should be profitable in that backtest period, but it's not. So instead of just trying changing your code, or going around and ask other people who probably cannot help you because haven't seen your strategy's code yet, you could just go ahead go through the logs, and there's a good chance that you will find it. And sometimes these logs may not be enough for you. And in these cases, you have two options. The first one is to go through Jesse's settings page and change which values you want to be logged. So for example, let's say that the candles are filling the space and making it hard for you to read. So you can enable or disable it in here. Or let's say these aren't even enough for you. In that case, you can define custom logs inside your strategy. So I said you could define the before method, and inside it for any, so let's just some custom condition, you decided to log something. You would do that by saying self.log and then pass the message. And that's it. And by doing this, you will receive new logs inside the output logs that Jesse gives you.
Awesome. And okay, so let's go ahead and, so I feel like we have a pretty good idea on creating a strategy class. We talked a bit about importing data from the user interface, and then now we've talked about how to visualize a backtest. We've looked at how you can export a number of different reports and data and visualize that on a chart. Oh, actually, we should cover one more, like this TradingView Pine editor. What does that button do? I'm sure some people will be interested in that.
Yeah, well, I can show you the output, but
that's awesome.
I don't have TradingView open. So
yeah.
If you are familiar with TradingView's Pine editor syntax, this is using the same syntax to visualize buy and sell orders. So just like the chart that I showed you here, now, as you can see, we have the buy and sell orders here, right? But like I said, it's not an interactive chart. You cannot zoom in, right? So what you could do instead is to just copy this output, all of it, open TradingView's Pine editor, paste these values, and then TradingView will show you the results. I don't have TradingView open on my MacBook, otherwise I would have shown you. But basically, it's just a copy and paste task. You don't have to know the syntax. You don't have to change anything. But you should know that because TradingView has this limit of how much back in time you can go, and also how many things you can display on a chart, Jesse cannot show you all the trades. It can also it can only show you as much as TradingView allows, which I think is like 80 or something. Basically, as much as you will see in this file. So if you don't see all of your trades in here, that's the reason.
Great. So let's go ahead and jump to. Can we jump to optimizations for a bit? And maybe while we're talking about optimizations, there's Charles Dellinger here has a question. Said something about making your own indicator methods, accessing. So yeah, that's another thing we should discuss. Like, so you mentioned that you import the Python TA package, right? And so I assume you can use any of those indicators that are built in, like you're using the SMA one right here. Charles asked about making your own indicator methods, which I assume you would just, can you extend TA, or would you just, yeah, you can add your own indicators to TA. Is that how you would go about that?
Yeah, well, you could do it in a variety of ways. And there's actually a guide on the documentation that gives examples of that. And I also want to mention that probably in most cases, if you can think of a strategy, it already exists in our library. So always make sure to check out the documentation first. But if you need to define your own, well, the easiest way is to just do it however you like. Like if you want to define it, define the function inside in a different module and import it here, or if you want to just define it as a new method and call it whatever you like my custom indicator, you could do that. Inside inside it, obviously you would write any code that you have, right? And what you need to know is the inputs, like because Jesse already provides the candles for you. So your custom code needs to receive the candles in the format that Jesse gives it to you. And that format is a NumPy array. And on the documentation website, you will find the exact format for that, which is here. So for example, and we have two properties. One is called the current candle, which is for receiving only the last candle. We have another one which gives you all the candles, and it's called candles. And if you want to receive candles which aren't, which Jesse cannot guess what it is, then you would use the get candles method. So for example, if your trading route is Bitcoin, but you want to receive candles for Ethereum, then you would use this built-in method called getCandles, which receives the exchange, symbol, and time frame. Now you receive it, and then you need to know that the format is like this. It's a NumPy array, and the values are like this. The first value is the timestamp, then the open, close, high, low, and volume. Nothing fancy. And then inside your strategy, obviously your method is going to return something, and you would use it inside your strategy. That's it. So you just need to know that the candles that Jesse gives you are in the NumPy array format, and that's it.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump further to optimization. I know this says hyperparameter. There's a method there in the top that says hyperparameters. Can you talk about that bit?
Yeah, sure. So imagine this golden cross strategy. I defined the periods as 50 and 200. Now, a simple question: why 50 and why 200? Right? Now, I don't want to get into whether or not you should optimize these parameters. That's another topic. But let's say you want. Let's say you want to know: should I use 50 or should I use 55? Right? How do you do that? Do you keep changing these values and run another backtest? Well, you can do that, but obviously it's going to take forever to try all the combinations, right? That's why we use optimization methods to find the optimal parameters for us. Now, with Jesse, to do that, first of all, Jesse uses the genetic algorithms behind the scenes to find the optimal values for you. But you don't have to know the genetic algorithm to use it. Instead, you use Jesse's API. And to show you for this example how that looks like, I actually defined it here. Now, you define this method called hyperparameters, and it returns a Python list of dictionaries. Per each value, we define a new dictionary object, which has a name, which is how we use it. It has a type, because your value could be an integer, it could be a float, it could be a Boolean. Then you define the minimum and maximum value. So in this case, our long simple moving average, it could start from 150 up to 210, or you could define it however you like. And the default will be what I defined earlier, which was 200. And I also defined another one for the short simple moving average. And this time I set the minimum to 20, the maximum to 100, and the default is 50. And the sky's the limit, really. So you could use this however you like. I'm just, in this case, I'm just optimizing 2 indicator period values, but you could use it for deciding anything. So let's say you want to know whether you should use the RSI or the stochastic RSI or something else. You could convert that into a logical question. For example, in the example I just gave, RSI or the stochastic RSI, you have 2 options, right? So you could describe this as an integer value. If it was 0, I will use the RSI. If it was 1, I would use the stochastic RSI. So you could define a new hyperparameter value for it and name it like stochastic type, and it could be if it could be an integer, and the minimum could be 0 and 1. Now, in this case, you might say, okay, I could use a Boolean, and yes, I could. But if we had like 3 indicators to decide from, then it would have made more sense to use an integer. And the default could be anything, but let's use 0. And then you would use the hyperparameter value in your strategy. And to show you that, so right now I am hard coding the 50 period here, right? To tell Jesse to not hard code it, instead use the optimized value, all I have to do is to say self.hp, which stands for hyperparameter, which is a dictionary. So now I have to pass in the key of that hyperparameter. And actually, my GitHub Copilot figured out the key for itself, but you can find it here. So you could just copy it and paste it here. And I'll do the same for the 200. So instead of 200, I'll say self.hp, and then I pass in the name, which is long SMA period, which is what we had here. And obviously, this could be anything that you like. And that's basically it.
Okay, so you build a list of all these different hyperparameters, and then you get this dictionary, and you can access the HP attribute by name. So whatever you put name here, and it can run through all the different permutations of these min and maxes. That's the gist of it, right? Cool.
Yeah, exactly. So using the genetic algorithm is going to try out all the possible values that start from, in this case, 150 up to 210, and also do the same for this one. It will keep doing that until it finds the optimal parameters. But obviously, it's not going to brute force and try all the combinations. It uses the genetic algorithm so that it can come up with the solution way faster than brute forcing it.
There's a couple questions about like tick data and bid ask information. So is this primarily downloading individual candlesticks, or does it go more detailed than that?
In this version of Jesse, intentionally, I limited it to candles data only. Okay. But before, like I mentioned, I built trading bots for clients. There was this one case where I needed to implement a high frequency a strategy or a market making strategy at one time. And I had to do that using the order book data or the bid and ask data. So I did it at some point, but in this version, I intentionally limited it to candles data only. And the reason for that is when you're doing high frequency trading, a number of new issues are introduced to the game, which are really difficult to deal with. And I thought to myself, it's better to do one thing right and then move on to more advanced types of trading. So this version of Jesse that's available for public right now, it can only trade candles, and the lowest time frame and the time frame is pretty dynamic. You could use whatever you like. I mean, not anything that you like, but most of them are supported, like 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and so on. But the lowest one is the 1 minute. So if I allow people to access the bid and ask data, but limit them to the only a 1 minute time frame, then it's not going to make a lot of sense. Because of that, I didn't include the order book data in the current API.
Okay. So we've talked about building your strategy class. We've talked about getting data, back testing, optimizing, logging, data formats. So let's go a little bit further. So let's pretend we've optimized it. We've come up with this brilliant strategy that we're happy with. If I want to deploy this and trade it live, how do I go about doing this? And also talk about like paper trading. So this is testing it here, like locally, right? You're logging out the messages on historical data. So let's talk about paper trading and support for that, and also how you would deploy for a live trading environment once you're ready.
All right. Just to finish the optimization, I'd have to say, now if I execute this, execute a backtest, Jesse is just going to use the default values because it hasn't found the optimal values yet. So, and to do that, I need to open the optimization tab and run an optimization session. And when I do that, it's going to try at all the different combinations. And at the end, it will come up with a table like this, which will rank the best DNAs of your strategy. And what is the DNA? It basically has the optimal parameters. So for example, if I copy so let's say I read these metrics and I like, for example, the win rate that I see here. I like the total trades that the strategy is taking here. And I decide that, hey, this DNA is good. Now to use it, I would have to copy the DNA from here and inside my strategy, define a method called DNA, which just returns a string like this. So I would paste it here. And now if I run a backtest or trade the strategy even live, then Jesse would know to use this in DNA, which will get translated into different values. So in this case, for example, this one was supposed to be between 20 and 100. And if I do it with this, it's going to be, so it won't use the default value anymore.
And that was a little bit magic to me, like this string here. So how does it know like that DNA function and you put that string in there? Like what's the magic behind that scene, behind the scenes on how that maps to that set of parameters?
Well, this was actually a problem that I spent a lot of time to solve, and that is because the genetic algorithm, it gives you DNA values, and the question is, how do I convert those DNA values into parameters, right? And the answer is, in the computer science, on each language, each character represents a number. So for example, the star sign here, it is represented by a number such as, let's say, 60 or something like that. And obviously I haven't memorized it, but it does. So behind the scenes, it translates using those, so it converts these strings into numbers, and then uses those numbers. Now to explain more, I'd have to show you the source code for it, which is open source, and you can take a look for yourself. But that's the gist of it.
Okay, and so people are okay. Thank you for that. So we're getting more questions about taking it live. So let's go ahead and jump to that part. So now that we know how to create a strategy and optimize, let's talk a bit about deployment, trading this both in a paper trading mode, possibly if you I think it supports paper trading, and taking it live.
Yeah. So to do that, basically all the features that are required for doing research and implementing a strategy and optimizing the strategy are open source and inside the main framework of Jesse. But live trading, now let's say you find an optimal strategy by using these tools. Now you want to go live, or maybe do a paper trading. Now at this point, you need the live trade plugin, which is a premium plugin, and that's actually how the community is sustained. So you need to get that plugin. Now to do that, you have two options. The first one is to contribute to the community by any way that you can. You could submit PRs, You could help other users on the Discord server, stuff like that, to get a discount. And that actually starts from like 1% to up to 100%. So basically, people who actually contributed directly to the framework, they get it for free. They don't have to pay anything. But others who cannot do that or don't want to do that, they can for the plugin. Once you do that, you can install the plugin. If you're using Jesse using the Docker image, you don't have to do anything. You just, after creating the license key and entering it inside your .mv file, which is here, Jesse will pick up on that. So the next time that you start your Docker containers, it will install the plugin behind the scenes. So you don't have to do anything. But if you are using Jesse with a native installation without Docker, then you have to enter a single command, which is just Jesse install live, if I'm not mistaken. You just do this and it will download the correct version for your operating system and Python version and install it for you. And after doing this, a live tab will open inside your dashboard, which I don't have it installed on my MacBook. This is in my main computer, but it will show up here, and it's going to look like very similar to the backtest page. So again, you would choose a route. You would choose a couple of options, but no duration, and you just press on the start. Or if you want to do paper trading, you just enable it. It's in an option like this page, and then when you start the trading session, is going to paper trade. And inside the settings, you could define the trading fees, the amount of capital that it should start with, or if it's a live session, you could define how much leverage you want to use, which leverage mode you want to use, like the isolated or cross mode. You could use all of that, and you don't have to change your strategy at all. So the same strategy that I just defined is going to work on the live mode without any changes, but you will get access to a couple of more tools that are helpful for monitoring your strategy, because with backtest we don't really have to monitor anything, but with a live session, it's often important to know, for example, let's say you have this condition for closing your position, like the one that we had here, right? Let's say at each specific point, you want to know what's the value for the short EMA now, what's the value for the long EMA now. Now, is it above that or is it below that? And if it's below that, you expect to close your position on the next receiving candle. You want to know this so that if it didn't happen, there's something wrong and you need to dig into it. Now, to monitor something like this, you have extra tools, such as the watch list, which is it's basically a list of dictionary values. I don't remember the syntax of it. It's on the documentation website. But basically, you can say, I just remembered. So it's like this. I can say long SMA and then pass in the value. And I could do the same for the long moving average. Yeah, so doing this, you can display any kind of custom data that you like, so that you can monitor your bot. You will also receive notifications on either Discord bots or Telegram bots. For example, every 1 hour or any other time frame that you specify, it will send you a report of your open positions and so on. Or you could even define your own custom logs, as I showed you earlier, using the self log method.
Great, great. Okay, so sorry, I'm looking through the audience questions as well. So I think we've done a good job of demoing the platform. So we're going a bit long now. So let's go ahead and zoom back out, and maybe we can stop the demo part and just talk about some just technical details and things like that. So let's go ahead and just jump back to the conversation part. And thank you. I really appreciate the very detailed demo. You went way in depth there. So you've gotten a lot of good compliments in the channel here about the demo. So it's quite impressive what you've built here. And so now that we've talked about what you've built, I was wondering, so we're all programmers on this channel. So that's what drew a lot of people here. They're coding, they're trying to build their own tools. They're exploring different open source libraries. And so while building this, I thought maybe we could take a minute to talk about, pretend I don't want to make JesseTrade. I want to use I want to build LarryTrade. How would I go about making LarryTrade? So I've kind of gathered some tools that you've used to make this thing. So, and we've covered some of them on this channel already. So you mentioned the TA package for Python used to provide some of these indicators out of the box. You mentioned using QuantStats, which is a library that shows your performance and different metrics about your strategy. And then as far as broker supporting all these different exchanges, I don't know, do you use CCXT that I've talked about, or individual libraries for each exchange? How does that go down?
I started looking at CCXT in the beginning because it was the go-to option for that I heard everywhere. But I realized that the problem is that each exchange has its own and unique problem. So on BitFX was this issue with missing candles, because when there wasn't any trading volume at a specific time, they wouldn't send you that candle at all. But on another exchange, they would, or maybe they had another problem. And CCXC tries to give you a unified API for all these different exchanges. But I realized that it cannot solve all these problems. And it doesn't mean it's a bad library by any means. It's just a very difficult task. And because of that, I thought to myself that it would be better if I wrote my own custom code to contact the exchange APIs directly, so that if there's something wrong with it, if their data is weird, which always is on each of these exchanges, I would be able to deal with them myself. And also at the time, CCXC was only offering the REST API, which is good for receiving candles and those kind of stuff, but it's not really great for receiving the information when you're running a live session, because you might hit the rate limits of the exchanges. For that reason, I wanted to use the WebSocket connection, so I had to write my own drivers. Although these days Jesse uses both the WebSocket and the REST API, but it doesn't use CCXT.
Great. Okay. And then as far as general infrastructure, so you mentioned you started your career as a Vue.js developer. So I'm kind of assuming this has a really sexy, nice UI. You probably used Vue.js for developing that. Is that correct?
Yes, the front end that I just showed, it is built using Vue.js.
And then
also,
okay. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Also, I just showed you the route that I described, like when the request, or in this case when a candle is received, it goes through a couple of methods to decide what to do. These methods, or you could say, it's kind of like a circle of what should happen. I'm sorry, a cycle. This idea is also taken from Vue.js. Which is one of the strong points of Vue.js, and how it makes things simple for front-end developers.
Awesome. And so, yeah, not only do you use Vue.js, you kind of incorporate some of the philosophy on how Vue.js was. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about Vue.js because everywhere I worked, everyone's like pushing React on everything. But exactly. I've always meant to explore Vue.js more, and I have a feeling maybe I would like it better if I did, but I never got around to it. And then I noticed when you were showing your, we were talking about deployment for a bit there, you were showing some Postgres settings. So is there a database required to use this? So part of the Docker installation, does it set up a database? What's stored in the database? Like, does it actually snap? Like when you download like data, does it like make a snapshot of it in Postgres? Your strategy results, like what kind of information do you store in there?
Well, right now, it stores the candle data. It does that so that the next time that you run a backtest or start a live session, you don't have to wait until the candles are downloaded and start the session then. So yeah, it stores the candle data, but that's basically it. In the coming future, I want to add ability to store orders, trading results, those kind of stuff, so that even after a backtest is done, you can go through the history of your backtest. So let's say you found a really cool combination of time frame symbol for your strategy, but then you lost it, you forgot about it, and you want to find it again. So yeah, I'm going to add to allow more records to use the database.
Great. Okay, and then one more thing. Anytime I write something in Python, or anything I do basically, there's always a comment, why didn't you use this other thing? And so naturally, I always get these questions, why do you use Python? It's slower than C++. Why don't you do everything in C++? And my answer is usually that it's easier to use Python. I'm most proficient at it. And I already get enough questions about people having problems with Python. I can only imagine if I coded everything in C++, the types of issues that people run into. And then in our notes, and do you use Python on the back end for most things here?
Yes.
And then, and then I noticed in our notes, like we jotted down a couple notes on what we're going to talk about. You mentioned using NumPy more extensively, I believe, over just using Pandas data frames. Do you want to talk about that, or anything you've noticed that you did to like optimize performance in Python versus just using what most people do?
Yeah, there are all these attractive tools, especially for Python out there. One of the most popular and actually a really good one is Pandas. As good as it is, I came to realize that in most of my use cases, NumPy does the job, and Pandas is built on top of NumPy. So that means it has to be slower than NumPy. Like there's no other way around it, right? So because of that, wherever I could get by using NumPy only, I did that. So I am still using Pandas, but only in the places that aren't really like super important to the execution engine of Jesse. Like at the end of each backtest, the metrics system that is using Pandas. But while the backtest is running, to calculate those candles, especially if you remember, I mentioned that Jesse calculates the results on the fly while the backtest is running. So that needs to be really fast. And I came to realize that NumPy calculations are super fast. So for that reason, I'm using NumPy as much as possible.
Awesome. Okay. And let me see if I can think of some other things. Okay. And then the other thing regarding tools, a lot of people have naturally in the chat have brought up some other tools they're aware of, like sounds like Trade, Hummingbot, all these types of things as well. Do you want to talk about the competitors or what they offer? Is there any limitations you see? I've meant to do a video or look into Trade, if that's how you say it, a bit more to see how that works. So do you have any initial thoughts on that from developing this?
I think, I don't want to really get into the details of it because I think it's a long discussion by itself. But basically, it comes down to the fact that if any of these platforms, especially if any of them offered all the tools that I needed at the time, I would have used them. For example, Hummingbot is a great tool, but for high frequency trading. If their community is usually writing market making strategies, and they are known for that. So if you want to write a market making strategy or any other type of strategy that's considered a high frequency strategy, then Jesse cannot do that for you, but Hummingbot can. So you have to look into that. But if you want to trade using candles, then Hummingbot isn't really built for that. So it really comes down to your use case rather than which tool is the best. But as for Freak.Trade, and to be honest, I haven't used it enough to to give firm opinions. So if people are wondering about that, my first recommendation is to actually try both, or try all of them if you can. But if you're comparing it to Jesse, I always recommend to try both and see which one helps you to implement your strategies easy for you. But in my opinion, in my personal opinion, I think Freak.Trade is a great project, but it was meant as like a hobby project for its creator. And the problem with that is the problem that was with Gecko. The creator created a great tool, but at some point he had to go and work for. I think he started his own hedge fund, or worked for a hedge fund. I think he started his own. So because the project wasn't sustainable, but Freak.Trade, I think Freak.Trade kind of has that problem. I'm not really know it's hard to know how. So that's a problem, concern, and it also wasn't solving the the look ahead bias, which I mentioned, and obviously it's really important for me because I mentioned it a couple of times. But other than that, if I have to recommend a tool other than Jesse that's candle based, I would actually suggest Freak.Trade. I think it's better than Gecko, Zenbot, or other tools that I found out there. And the fact that it's open source and it has a huge community, I think that's also a really great feature of it, because if you want to build something, there are going to be a lot of people to help you. So yeah, I think it's a really good option. But Hummingbot is, I think, built for high frequency trading and not candle based trading.
Cool. So I think that might be a good time to kind of let's talk about sustainability of a project like this, and community, both of those a bit. And you remember you mentioned, I think, someone starting a hedge fund and working different jobs to support something like this. And I think even Backtrader, which I discussed a while back, that guy had a forum, right? And he replied to everyone. And you can kind of see over time how he kind of got negative and then eventually just stopped doing it, because it's kind of becomes this thing you want to do and document, and it's a labor of love. And I recognize that from doing a channel like this. It just takes tons and tons of time, and it can be kind of thankless sometimes, I would say. And so the Backtrader guy, I think he started his own hedge fund, and then I don't really know his full story, but he kind of stopped, and then other people need to take over. And so you'll see a lot of different open source projects that were started, but then just abandoned over time. And I actually wrote, me and a friend worked on one of the early PHP frameworks, before Laravel years ago, and we open sourced that. But I also just all the tickets that would come in, and having another job and all these things. So eventually I abandoned that project as well. And so, there's just everyone, once you give something away, everyone expects everything for free, right? So yeah, let's talk a little bit about sustainability on the project, because as I understand it, you're all in, this is your full-time thing now, right? Is working on Jesse.Trade. And so let's talk about this as a business. I know there's been a variety of open source projects that became very successful business. I mean, there's publicly traded stocks that were based on open source projects, because I know database companies, even like MongoDB, I think was just an open source database. Redis was a caching thing. I think Redis even went public or is going to. And so those became large business over time. Linux, Red Hat Linux IPO'd years and years ago. And so these things all started as some, smaller project and built a community around them, and eventually were deployed in commercial purposes, right? And if you're an open source author, you deserve, for spending years of time on something like this, you deserve some compensation. If Google is using your open source tool, right, it makes sense for you to receive some of the benefit of that. So yeah, let's talk about some of your thoughts there, because as I understand it, you sell a live trading version of this, or I don't think it's on sale yet, but you're planning to. And so you've worked on this a number of years, and you're trying to transition and grow. First of all, you're growing a community so that people can help each other, because you can't answer questions of like, and I relate to on this channel, like there's 50,000 some people with questions. You can't answer them all on your own. You need people to interact with each other. So you have a community, and then also you need to support yourself while you're working on this. So yeah, let's talk about, I guess, community first. So I noticed you have a Discord for this. A lot of people ask me for a Discord. I personally have been a bit hesitant, as I mentioned to you, that if I make a Discord, it's just a live people asking questions nonstop, and I won't be able to keep up with that. So what's your experience running a community and keeping a sustainable project so far?
Yeah, well, my opinion is actually very similar to what you said. So many of the things that I'll say will be just duplicate. But growing a community is really good. I already mentioned why I did it. It was to receive feedback, to see if I'm onto something good, and I was, and it gave me a positive spirit. But the problem that we all have is that we have to pay bills, right? So and back then I had released the backtesting part only. I released the optimization mode and the live mode, which is a plugin these days, later. And so the community was there, but the thing about the community is that a good number of them, they share whatever they can. They share their thoughts. They help you with the code. Some of them share the code. Some of them submit PRs for an open source project, which is great. But the majority of people don't do any of these. Now, some of them, they have daily jobs. Some of them just aren't that much into the project, and that's perfectly fine. And there's also, unfortunately, a percentage of people who just use it and aren't willing to do anything like at all. Like even if you ask them, they will respond you like unpolitely or something like that. And I've seen this problem with many projects, especially the ones who try to sell like a service, a support, or anything. So yeah, there are a small number of percentage of people who they just responsibility to build a tool and maintain it. And I think, I mean, it probably isn't right, but in my case, I would be fine with writing some code and releasing some of it out to the public as a hobby project, to get some feedbacks, and then move on from it. Go on with my life, or my other projects. But if I'm going to maintain that project, that means I have to spend time on it every day. And we have only a few number of hours during the day, right? So we cannot keep doing that, and it's just a fact. So I have to be very picky for the projects that I work on. And as the number of community grows, the number of questions grow. That means I have to spend more time on it. So I think when developers get to this point, they have to choose. Obviously, they have to choose between either shutting down the project or leaving it, or trying to build a business on top of it, so that that could be their job. So they don't have to work on a full-time job during the day and work on the project at night, because some of these projects are also really complex, and they take a lot of time, like Jesse, for example. And I chose the second one, but many I've seen choose the first one, either because they want to, or because sometimes they think they have to, because they're under pressure by some members. And what happens with the ones that choose the first option is that at some point they have no choice but to leave the project, because you cannot keep doing that, right? Maybe you can do that when you're single, but the other day you might have your own child, and you're gonna need money, right? And I think that's really unfortunate, because if my tool is something that people are using and depending on, one thing that they really care about is whether or not they can keep using it tomorrow or next month, right? I don't want to develop a strategy, for example, using this bot that's going to stop working like next year. Let's say a new version of Python comes out, and then this tool doesn't really work on that, and I'm not like a developer with the skills to update that project. So that's going to be a real pain. It's also a real shame to see people who are really creative to build these projects in the first place to have money problems. Because in the example of Algotrading, if you work for a hedge fund, you're going to get a really good salary like real quick, right? Especially if they know that you can build something good. But it would be a shame to work only for a firm rather than that everyone can use. So I think it's actually good for the community to have these people and use their tools. Now, but on the other hand, it's really important when you do an open source project, going to get a lot of contributions, especially people who spend a lot of time maybe submitting a PR or helping other users. So I think it would be better if we could have a system to actually give back to those users as well. So if you just sell something, there's a chance that you're going to miss out on giving back to those users. And I think there are a number of ways to solve that problem, and it changes based on the project. But in my case, it was what I mentioned, which is I gave discounts for the plugin to users based on the contributions that they did. And I actually keep doing that. So for example, if someone added a really useful part to the framework, I don't really want that guy to pay anything, because he literally spent his time maybe 10 hours to write that code. And if it was for a paid job, he would have received money for it. So the least that I can do is to give it for free to them. Or something else that I want to do in the future is that I already share a number of strategies as much as I can these days, but I still keep some of them for myself, right? The ones that I'm actively creating, or that I'm trading for, let's say, an investor that gave me capital to do something special for him. But I'd like to have like another group, a more private group for the traders who are willing to share more stuff, because sharing your strategy is something that I almost never see people do. I mean, some people do, especially on our community, but the percentage is really low. And I think those people deserve more. So I'd like to also have a more private group where these type of people can share their hard earned strategies. But my point is that I think other than the creators receiving some sort of payment or something that they can sustain their life, the contributors also should receive something that they deserve.
And yeah, I guess this is a crypto project. I know this is a trading project, but do you see a role there, or do you think just discounts and stuff are enough to be an incentive or reward for people to contribute? I know people are talking about like Gitcoin and other different projects and different ways of funding these types of efforts as a community, or sharing, DAOs and all that kind of stuff. Do you go that far, or are you more focused on just traditional routes for funding this type of project?
I actually thought about that. I thought about all the options that I had for sustainability, and one of them was to do a DAO system, like, and offer tokens, and maybe give a number of tokens to users who already contributed, and so on, which is something I've seen in a lot of projects. Now, I'm not a blockchain developer, so I think I'm not in a position to really comment on what they're doing is right or wrong. But what I can say is that I don't feel comfortable about releasing a token, which I know some people are going to buy during the bull market, something that's going to be overpriced. And unfortunately, something that I see with these projects is that they market it in a way that would even go higher. So, for example, they would sometimes organize their release schedules, their news, or maybe even do shady stuff such as pump and dump, just to get some new investors, make the token overpriced, and dump the tokens on the investors. And what happens is that the creators of the project, they become wealthy. A number of traders also make a good profit, but a very big number of them are going to lose. And like I said, it doesn't mean all projects are like this. It depends on them how to execute it. But I just don't feel comfortable doing that, or be in a position that, just to know that my next release is going to have an impact on the price, and some people are going to make or lose money based on that. It makes me uncomfortable because,
Sure.
for example, if I make a mistake now, if there's a bug in a release that I make, I'm going to fix it, and it's going to be fine. But if there's a token out there, then some people are going to literally lose money on it, and I just wouldn't be able to sleep comfortably knowing that. And that's why I didn't do that. Another option is to receive donations. And I've seen this method working actually with projects such as Vue.js, where the number of users is huge. And when I say huge, I mean like millions of users. Because the percentage of users who actually donate is extremely low. So then the overall number of your community has to be in millions. But in algo trading, that's not the case. So if you do donations, I think you're just going to starve, and I don't think it's a good idea. So that's why I just decided to go with the good old sell something. If people want it, they have to pay for it, and it's as simple as that.
Great. And then I guess, we can continue on that route a little bit more. Oh yeah. So you can get funding, you can give discounts to people that contribute to the project. You can accept donations, and you can charge premium. And so you took the route of a premium feature set. I've also seen some people split it up by the type of customer. So yeah, Goldman Sachs or something use this in their crypto trading or something for whatever reason, they should pay even a premium beyond what an individual would pay. So I've seen a lot of people go the route of, if you're using it for a trading business. And I think I'm glad you went into detail and we're open to discussing this, because I have some of these same questions regarding, because I put a lot of time in things that I do teaching, and I've done a bunch of volunteer teaching roles and things like that. But at the same time, it just takes so much time. And, you can go work at Coinbase or one of these places, and they pay $500,000 a year in my area. And so it's like, why would you spend time doing this? And so it's interesting. It's something I've been challenged with as well. And, I have different things I've thought about. So I have like a buy me a coffee, there's a few bucks here and there. And then I've done sponsorships. So I've questioned whether to do a sponsorship, because I think it can get a bad name because it can be overdone. Right. And so there's a lot of crypto channels and stuff. And it's like sponsor. And all this, also that's annoying. So finding the right balance there. But at the same time, if I'm like doing the best interactive brokers tutorial and they're a $40 billion company, I shouldn't be like, a volunteer that's just promoting their product to an interested audience, for free as well. So yeah, those are some things I've thought about doing, so it's not as building a big open source project, but as just someone talking about businesses and trading APIs and these things that are worth billions of dollars in venture capital all around me. Should I just keep talking about their product when, they'll pay you as a developer relations person or something to discuss their project? So yeah, it's an interesting discussion on how to respect the people that the people that use your open source project, or respect your audience and people that trust you as an authentic person, while at the same time, supporting yourself and valuing your time. So I'm glad we dove into that discussion. So that's great. And so, yeah, so let's go ahead and let's just talk about the future, right? So we talked about how you develop this project, some of the features it has now. So where are you hoping this goes over the next year? Like, what are your big goals? What kind of features do you want to add? Do you have any things you want it to become? And then I think someone even asked, just to close it out, just some advice for people. They're getting started with programming and Python and finance and are interested in this type of project. Do you have any advice, that sort of thing? So yeah, let's just start with your roadmap. What do you hope to add that you don't have yet?
Right now, the current version, because I used to trade futures contracts, the thing that I built was also focused on trading futures contracts. So that's good because if you want to short an asset, you can do that easily with Jesse. It's a first-class citizen feature of it. But on the downside, support for spot trading isn't officially supported until this moment. Something that I on right do that. The API of Jesse will be clear, right? Because the way you write your strategy for trading futures and trading the spot market is a bit different. Here, for example, in one, you might want to use leverage. So you need to know your available margin at each point. But if you're trading the spot mode, then you don't. So the API or that you write your strategy in should be different. So really soon, I'm going to release the support for the spot trading. And when I do that, and after that, very soon after, I will be able to release the stable version 1 of Jesse. And I think, and I'm really excited about that, because when people see that your library is in a version below version 1.0, sometimes they're scared of using it, because they'll think, okay, so this thing isn't stable enough. What if it changes tomorrow? Then I have to change all of my code. So they'd be hesitant. So I think the release of the version 1 is really important milestone for the project. The next thing I want to implement is this community voting page. I want to add it to the website, and that's important because right now I implement a lot of features based on the demand that comes from the community, from the DMs that I get, for example. And the problem with that is not everyone who wants something is going to ask you, right? But if you make it easier for them to tell you about it, then they might. So I'm building this page where people can request for features, and the other users can see those features and vote on it. Basically, kind of like how it is on Reddit. And that way, I will know better which features are there's more demand for them, and try to tackle those tasks first. And other users will also, instead of just imagining or asking me what types of tasks I'm going to work on later, earlier, they can just see it on that page. So I think that will improve the communication between the community and I. The other thing is we have this strategy index page, which isn't really talked about a lot. But based on the analytics that I see on the website, it's the most visited page. That means people really want to see example strategies, or maybe even to plug and trade them, which I never recommend doing so. But the current page that we have, it hasn't been updated because someone needs to update it manually, which is really time consuming. And because of that, also the number of strategies is really limited right now. So I'm going to automate that process so that I can just add new strategies and add the improvement to that page is coming soon. I also really want to release more tutorial screencasts on my YouTube channel, which I created just a few months ago, because I've come to realize that videos are really helpful for users. And right now, I have just released videos about how to install Jesse, but very soon I want to cover the basics of using Jesse, and maybe after that go on to talk about how to do risk management and position sizing with Jesse, because that's the topic that I really care about, to protect the user's capital. And in the long term, I intend to release features to implement features such as reinforcement learning. I mentioned that we already have the genetic algorithm. The reinforcement learning is another topic that I think can be really useful in trading, but it's a bit complex. And I think it's a problem that I can solve. I think I can make it simpler and build it into Jesse so that people can use it, whether to come up to let it find them a strategy, or maybe to optimize some part of their strategy. For example, let's say that my strategy is good at position sizing, is good at deciding like the bigger trend of the market, but it's not great at picking the right moments for entering or exiting trades. So I could train a model to make those decisions for me. I want to make this part easy. I want to add features such as Monte Carlo simulations to the backtesting engine. I will probably add support for inverse future contracts, because I think when a bull market comes, those are some really attractive assets to trade. And that's basically all that I have in mind right now. But really, what it all comes down is to which features are requested more frequently, and I will probably tackle those first. So yeah, this roadmap could change basically at any time. So the long-term roadmap, it's not really that clear, but these are what I have in mind right now.
Awesome. And so now it seems like you're set up in such a way where you can execute that roadmap. Like, do you need to like raise money? Like, are you able to successfully bootstrap this and make this project self-sustaining, at least for, this year or the short term? Is that all set up good?
Yeah, well, right now, I'm in a position in my life where I've kind of cut down on my expenses. So what I'm making these days and my savings are enough for me to keep working on Jesse for years. Also, softwares are growing day by day. So even though I'm not making even nearly to what I was making on a full-time job with the hedge fund, but I am making enough to keep doing this for as much as I can see. But I don't really plan on like raising money or like hiring new developers or speeding things, because some of the things that I'm working, I need to do it creatively. And to be honest, if there's a lot of pressure on me, like on delivering stuff, I can't really do that. Especially like the thing I mentioned about reinforcement learning. I think that's a creative task. But if you get involved with investors, then you have to make them promises. Then you have to deal with deadlines, and I just don't find that a suitable option for me. So yeah, it will be mostly me. Although I have other developers who already help me, especially with maintaining the community. So I'm not really alone. But yeah, mostly it will be me. And for at least the coming year, I have a clear path on what to do. But after that, really isn't clear. So I don't know. Maybe a year from now, I actually hire new developers, or maybe I do raise money. But right now, that's what I have in mind.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I guess we should go ahead and start. Where you broke the record. We've gone over 2 hours on the live stream, which is crazy. And I'm sure I could talk to you forever. And I think we'll keep in touch probably and do some discussions on some other things that I think that would be great. So let's do that. So yeah, I guess we should wrap it up here. And let's see. I just want to say thanks for taking all this time. I think, as we mentioned, it's very rare to talk to people that are willing to share all of this information. You could just go work at a hedge fund or a bank or a firm and go about your day, just developing some strategies there, or go be a software engineer, or just be a Vue.js developer, and just go about your day and not spend time open sourcing projects. But fortunately for us, there's people like you, people like the author of CCXT and other libraries like QuantStats that take the time to package this all up and share what they've learned, their experience, and put it all together and put it out there in the world for people to piggyback on and build on it. And that's how we've gotten such a great world. There's these big companies, but they all started as, libraries of code just building on each other, and open source projects all connecting together to make something bigger, and for everyone to add their own unique perspective and creativity too. So thanks for developing this framework for everyone. And yeah, let's go ahead and finish up with where can people find you if they want to get involved, if they want to check out the project, if they want to message you maybe directly or join your community? I know you mentioned you have a YouTube channel now where you're demonstrating Jesse.Trade, so we can follow you there. Twitter, where do we find you?
Yeah, basically, if they want to contact me, probably the best place would be our Discord server. They can DM me. And if they want to receive like my tutorial content, I'm going to put it out on my YouTube channel, which is called Algotrading with Saleh. And that's basically it. I'm also on Twitter, but to be honest, I'm not really active there. I intend to make some not tutorials, but just quick tips about algo trading. But I haven't been really successful for sticking into Twitter. So yeah, so basically YouTube and Discord are the best places.
Perfect. Yeah, same here. I'm with you on the Twitter thing. I feel like I'm supposed to be there, but at the same time, I'm finding it more distracting and annoying lately. So I just gradually stopped tweeting. So I love YouTube here because it's just we're getting together and talking about stuff and learning from each other rather than, Twitter has all this weird dynamic of everyone hating on each other and getting outraged. So yeah, this is great just to have a 2-hour conversation like this, all interrupted. So amazing. Someone asked coupon code. So you're selling something, right? And or this live trading option that can be purchased. Do you have some kind of coupon, or for people that are from this audience, for instance, how would we go about getting a discount on some things you offer in the future?
Yeah, right now that as I mentioned, I haven't released the stable version 1.0.
Mhm.
The plugin is on sale for 50%. So they can the sale is going on. But if they want further coupons, they can contact me directly, and I will talk to them about like what kind of contributions they can make to get one. And I almost always there's almost a way for everyone to get one, basically, if they are willing to just spend their time. So
Absolutely. And
I would say
yeah.
just contact me.
And that's perfect because I know a lot of people have asked me or who watch this channel, like, oh, how do I get started or get contribute or get more experience and all these things. And I feel like one of the best ways to get started is to jump into an open source project that has real code. And you also have someone to like look at your code and decide whether to merge it or not. So that's just one of the best ways to get started. Some people want this to be their career. They want to get a job and they want to work at a hedge fund and so forth, or want to work on their own strategy. So I think something like this would be the perfect way to get involved and have a community, that supportive community around you to help out. So great. All right. Well, I think that's it for now. We've gone a couple of hours. So yeah, we'll keep in touch and I'll talk to you in the future. And thanks for everyone out there. I think this one set a record for the most people. I noticed there was consistently over 100, 130 people or so the whole time for 2 hours. So very amazing. So thanks for sharing all of this information, Saleh, and I wish you great success on the project in the future. And I'll be watching it, and I'll probably make a tutorial about it myself. So thanks a lot.
Well, that would be great. And thank you again for having me. It's been a real pleasure and honor.
All right. Thank you very much. And Stefan, yes, it is live. And there it is. Look forward to talking more. And yeah, everyone stay tuned. Lots of stuff. Well, I'm trying to get lots of new guests to share this type of information as well. So thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.